Practice today presented by SiriusXM. Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen joined by a very special guest. If you have not noticed already, that's Jets General Manager Mike Maccagnan. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys.
This is a special treat. Not only do we have you, but we have you live on all the Jets platforms. You spoke to the media yesterday. How would you assess the team at the midway point?
Well, we're 3-5, so we're not necessarily happy with our record. We've obviously had 5 losses. We've been competitive in some of those losses, but unfortunately we've come up short. Aside from the record, we do feel we have some good young players that have been in a situation this year that played well. We're excited about them going forward. We think there's some good things to build on going forward. Obviously, we have a whole another half of football to play, so we're focused really pretty much on every game going forward, trying to win these games.
Yesterday you said that you were very excited and encouraged by the way that Sam Darnold has played thus far through the season. What makes you excited about the way that he's played?
Well, it's difficult for any young quarterback to come into the league, especially as a rookie, and transition to the NFL. So there's always a maturation process they go through. But a lot of things like, that Sam got exposed to in college from the college system he ran and the competition he played against as he transitioned to the NFL. There's a lot of things that he's never really had to deal with before from a learning standpoint, from a system and from a scheme standpoint, from playing against a much better talent. The thing we've really liked with Sam is how he's been, the coaches have really developed him, brought him along. I know in college he did a lot of really impressive things we saw playing within the pocket, off schedule. I think the one really impressive thing is how he's had some good games and bad games, but he's really made progress, we felt, in terms of handling the offense and playing from the pocket, and we're excited about him going forward. We feel he's very young, he's just turned 21, but we feel he's a bright upside.
What can you say about his work ethic? Because you did mention yesterday that before practice you look out your window here at one Jets drive, 20 minutes before practice, the first guy who's on the practice field is number 14, Sam Darnold.
So I think a lot of times when you look at a quarterback or evaluate a quarterback, we do so much work on them, not just from an ability standpoint, from an intangible standpoint. So everybody at Southern Cal, and we did a lot of research on him, was very very high about him from a personal character and a football character standpoint. But really, it's funny, I was sitting there sort of getting ready to go talk to the media, and as I sort of saw him walk out on the field by himself, the first guy out, which just, again, this sort of exemplifies, kind of what he is. His approach to the game has been outstanding. He's a very passionate young man. He's very competitive. We've talked about his presence and his ability to, transition to, a pro locker room, and he's just literally turned 21 years old. But from those things, we feel really good about that he's going to hopefully grow, develop, and fulfill his potential based on some of those intangibles.
We could certainly talk about Darnold for an hour, but can you go back a calendar year? Maybe where would you have been last year at this point? Because you were doing the quarterback circuit, and a lot of times you were out West Coast.
Yeah, it was. I got a lot of frequent flyer miles last year, and didn't see my wife all that much. But no, it's interesting. I'm still active, and I go on the road. And I do get a chance to get into some colleges, mostly games, and nowadays, but because of my schedule here. But no, a year ago, it was a pretty intensive, travel schedule, trying to go figure out what games I was going to see, because it's very important not only to when you evaluate the quarterbacks, or to see them live, and I used to do certain things which I can kind of see them done on the sideline, how they interact with other players. But no, that was kind of crazy last year. I'm glad, the frequent flyer miles are nice, but I'm glad I don't have to do it quite as much this year. But it was, and then the big part was always trying to get from the West Coast back to where we're playing. That was always a difficult part. A lot of red-eye flights.
What can you say about the rest of this 2018 Jets draft class? Because recently Chris Herndon's flashed, and Perry Nickerson's gotten a lot of time on the field. Same with Nathan Shepard. So what do you like about the rest of this draft class?
And I would just mention Trenton Cannon as well, who's getting some offensive snaps, but he leads your team in special teams tackles. He's becoming a really valuable player for Brant Boyer.
So, obviously we've talked about Sam. Nathan Shepard's done a good job for us. He's played quite a bit. Again, he came from a lower level competition school, but he's transitioned well. He's a very talented young kid. He's played and done a good job for us. He's still maturing as a player. Chris Herndon, I think a lot of people have noticed the last few weeks he's gotten some opportunities, made some plays for us. I mean, we feel very good about him and where we got him in the draft. And how he's developing, progressing, not only as a blocker, but more importantly as a receiver. And there's a nice dynamic kind of developing with him and Sam. Obviously you mentioned Trenton Cannon. He's done a good job for us. We originally took him as a returner, but Roberts, who we also signed as a free agent, has really done well in that role.
Yeah.
So that's sort of taken away a little bit from his impact there. But he made up for it a little bit by getting some opportunities as a running back with some of the injuries we've had to Bilal, but also really as a special teams player. Foley, we took him. He may actually get a chance to be activated this week. We'll see. Depending on what happens with Steve McClendon.
Sure.
With his injury, but I know Foley's a guy that we've liked quite a bit, and we're kind of excited to see him eventually get some time. And then Perry Nickerson's again a player that we liked where we took him. He's done a good job for it. We liked him all through training camp in the off season. Unfortunately, due to injuries, he got a chance to step in and play more, and he did a very nice job. And we think he's a good young player going forward. We're excited about him.
I thought a lot of your under the radar moves. You mentioned Roberts. He's been one of the NFL's top return men this season in 2018. You trade a 7th-round pick on draft weekend. You get a guy who's a valuable part of your defensive line rotation, a nonstop motor in Henry Anderson. And then it turns out you get a guy in Brandon Copeland who ends up being a starting outside linebacker for you.
Yeah, so it was interesting. This, and we were active in free agency this year, and we signed guys with bigger ticket items in terms of salaries and sort of low dollar guys. I think our approach has always been to try to identify the right players and value. This offseason we went into it a little bit. We've I don't want to say we focused solely, but we did actually have a little more influence in terms of the special teams unit. I think that's one of the things that we're happy about this season. I think our special teams have actually played very, very well. I think we rate as one of the higher ones in the NFL right now.
Yep.
So that's a good, in the 3 phases, that's one of the 3 phases that we obviously want to focus on between offense and defense. But Roberts is one of those guys for, the kind of the contract where we got him. Has come in and done an outstanding job, but I think the other part of it, and it's funny you mentioned Copeland. Copeland's done a very good job for us on defense, but he was, we also liked him very much as a special teams player originally, so it was sort of an added bonus when he got an opportunity to play. And coming from the defense, he was in a 4-3 defense, and we put him in a 3-4 defense, and we thought he was a little bit better fit for what we were going to ask of him, and he stepped up nicely and has really sort of blossomed and done a nice job there. But that's part of the whole process you go through the free agency. You try to make sure you add parts to the team that are, whether they're large ticket items or small ticket items in terms of the players' contracts. But those are important parts for us building going forward.
Interesting dynamic for you at the trade deadline. You mentioned how busy you were on the phones. No trades actually finalized, but when you look at the financial flexibility that you've set yourself up with, what went into the deadline this year?
Well, I think the NFL trade deadline is always funny because it always heats up at the very end, and I think a lot of times there's different teams look for different things. I mean, we're obviously trying to look at any things we can do to help our team go forward and build our team. Not just we're focused obviously right now on trying to win football games, so that's our primary focus. But you sort of balance that out with what the compensation would be. But we were very active in free agency, and we talked to quite a few teams on some different possibilities. In the end, the deals kind of came through that we felt were ideally suited for us with the compensation. But we did pursue those and looked into those. But that's always a very again, as you lead up to it the last few days, you spend most of my day literally sitting in my office talking on the phone to almost every team in the league.
You said you talk to everybody except the teams in your division.
Yeah, you don't. Sometimes I have the other pro scouts call the teams in our division, but I don't. I mean, a lot of times it's hard to trade within division, so you sort of focus on the other teams that are out there. And I'm not really sure any of the teams in our division were really buyers or sellers that much this year. So,
Mike, we can't thank you enough for coming on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. And Mike talked about his perspective from the trade deadline. Well, earlier this week, head coach Todd Bowles talked about what his perspective is from a coaching standpoint on the trade deadline.
As a coach who kind of needs to win in the here and now, regardless of the year, how do you balance the importance of maybe not making a deal for somebody that you could use?
Well, that's not my department right there, so I'm trying to win all the time regardless, whether it's first year, second year, third year, fourth year, first game, last game, preseason. I'm always trying to win, so that never changes on my part.
Todd, is it encouraging in any way for you guys that you have all these division games in front of you still this season?
Well, the fact that we got 8 in front of us is the biggest thing. We got to win 8 no matter who we're playing. The division means a lot, obviously, but we got to win mostly all of them to try to get where we want to go.
That was head coach Todd Bowles. Again, great to have Mike Maccagnan on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen.
I'm so disappointed. I have so many topics to get to.
Oh, I mean, we could have done like an hour special with Mike alone.
He was great, but I think a lot of fans are looking at the trade deadline, and they want that immediate satisfaction. Whereas a GM, you want to win every week, but you have to set this up for the long term. And Mike Maccagnan, I think, has this team headed in the direction where he wants it. He's got his young quarterback in place. The Jets are very happy with Sam Darnold. Now he's got a lot of financial flexibility where he can go out and surround Darnold with even more pieces. I think the Jets are headed in the right direction. Nobody inside this building, Greens, is happy with a 3-5 record for a third consecutive year. But I'll tell you what, it feels a lot different to me because in 2016, the Jets put that band back together who won 10 games in 2015, and it kind of crumbled. And some of the very good players, they got old or their bodies broke down. So 2017, you come back, you get Josh McCown. He was a stabilizing force for this team, for this franchise, a career year, but he was 38 years old. During those 2 years, you're wondering who's going to be your quarterback of the future. Well, you know who your quarterback of the future is. That's Sam Darnold. Masterful job by Mike Maccagnan in the offseason to be able to get in position to grab the USC product. And so far, so good. I know he's completed 55% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but people around the league have taken note. They think this guy is going to be a very good one. It's the most important position in all sports.
Well, we had Brian Baldinger on the Official Jets podcast earlier this week. He said, I don't care about rookie statistics. I saw Peyton Manning throw 30 interceptions. And not only that, just two things is one, the Jets have a first-round pick this year. They gave up 3 twos to get up from 6 to 3. And the second thing is that the Jets have a lot of financial flexibility.
They got the most in the league, Greens.
Yeah, well, Mike said that. According to overthecap.com, the Jets are second. Okay. Well, let's move the page. Let's turn the page here.
No, but I do want to say Maccagnan.
Okay, we're not turning the page.
No, we're not just yet, because I do want to add that Maccagnan did trade Teddy Bridgewater for a 3. So the Jets have an additional 3 while they don't have the 2 this year. And they kept their 1 in 2019 while still getting Sam Darnold.
All right, you ready to turn the page?
Yeah, turn it.
All right, so the Jets and Dolphins play this Sunday in Week 9. But before we go there, it's time for In the Game with EA. EA's favorite segment here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Jets quarterback Sam Darnold, figured it was topical for this live special with Mike Maccagnan, has thrown for 7 touchdowns for at least 20 yards this season, tied for third most in the league. Who is ahead of him? EA is going to give his answer later on in the show. But let's focus on the Dolphins now.
Okay.
Well, are you ready?
Yeah, I got to write down.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn the page here to the Miami Dolphins because this is the Jets and Dolphins' second meeting.
A lot of page turning out here today. Okay.
This is the second meeting between these two teams this season, but it's the third quarterback that the third Dolphins quarterback the Jets will face in as many games. Last year, it was Jay Cutler. Mm-hmm. Then it was Ryan Tannehill in Week 2. Now it is Brock Osweiler. And Brock Osweiler doesn't get a great reputation around the league from his previous stops, but he's been playing pretty good for the Dolphins so far.
Yeah, when you compare the statistics with Osweiler and Tannehill, they're eerily similar in terms of passing the football. So he has come in there and he's played well for them. The biggest difference between Osweiler, who is 6'7", is he is a traditional pocket quarterback. With Tannehill, he's more of a scrambler. He can get out of the pocket. He played wide receiver at Texas A&M, or was recruited to play receiver at Texas A&M, so more athletic ability there. Osweiler is a guy who the Jets are going to get after in the pocket. He, once in a while, he'll go tuck it and things like that, but he's more of a traditional pocket quarterback, and he's giving them some stability back there. They're dealing with some different weapons on the outside, as you know, Greens. Albert Wilson, who caught a touchdown in the first meeting in Week 2, he's on injured reserve. And also Kenny Stills. I don't think he's practiced this
Kenny
week.
Stills has not practiced with a groin injury. And those two guys are really the guys that stretch the field for the Dolphins. Albert Wilson averages 15 yards a catch, and Kenny Stills 17.6. They each have 4 touchdowns a pop this season. But someone that is playing for the Dolphins that the Jets did not see in Week 2, That's Devontae Parker, who exploded against the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football. He had over 100 yards receiving.
Yeah, when you look at the Dolphins, though, I think they're going to try to get the run game going. I think Adam Gase tries to do that smash mouth approach, and I do like their running backs. Frank Gore is more of a downhill runner, and then Kenyon Drake is the guy who's more shifty. But like you mentioned, right now, Osweiler is going to have to depend on Devontae Parker, who has not been productive so far in the National Football League, but he got off against the Texans. And then the other guy is Danny Amendola. Traditionally, you see Amendola play inside. The Jets are very familiar with him from his days with the New England Patriots.
And the Jets secondary, a little bit of a different look than week 2 because Marcus May, assuming will play this Sunday. He played last Sunday after hurting his thumb against the Indianapolis Colts. And not only that, but head coach Todd Bowles will give the final injury report after practice in the early afternoon. But Trumaine Johnson, a step in the right direction. He was limited yesterday for the first time after suffering a quad injury weeks ago. Yeah,
this is big for the Jets because they're getting healthier in that defensive backfield. Buster Screen came back from that concussion last week. Marcus May, admirable job against the Chicago Bears, leading the team in tackles with 7. I think he tied for the lead in tackles with that wrapped up thumb. And remember, Marcus May loves going back to Florida. He's a Florida native. He's a fellow Gator like myself. And he had an interception against the Miami Dolphins last year down there. That will be one of the keys for the Jets this week. Can they take away that run and then get after Osweiler and make some plays in the secondary? If they get Trumaine Johnson, that should provide another boost.
On the offensive side of the ball for the Jets, some receiver injuries. Of course, Quincy Enunwa has not played in a couple games. Robbie Anderson missed last week's game against the Bears with an ankle. They have not practiced yet, but still have an opportunity to be questionable for this Sunday's matchup if they are practiced today in some way, shape, or form. But if the Jets want to win in Miami, they're going to have to establish a ground attack, and they might get Eli McGuire back in the lineup, who's eligible to be activated off of IR.
Yeah, that's great, and that's one of the topics that we didn't talk to Mike about, but we certainly could have. But Isaiah Crowell and Trenton Cannon, they were the top 2 backs, of course, last week against Chicago. The Jets brought up D'Angelo Henderson from the practice squad. But Eli McGuire is a guy, Greens, who had a tremendous spring. Unfortunately, he goes down on the first day of training camp with the foot injury. I think he's going to be a very good back in the National Football League. And the Jets, when that offense is going, they're running the football. So let's see if he can get back in the lineup this week.
Eli McGuire, both a good rusher and a good receiver, and last year was the 6th-round pick for the Green and White out of Louisiana Lafayette.
That's another
value pick.
Yeah, when we're talking about Mike Maccagnan, everybody's talking about his draft classes, things like that. It's a great find in the 6th round. Period.
All right, so just numbers for you real quick is the Jets averaged 78 yards a game on the ground over their last 3. The Dolphins' rushing defense struggling as of late, 200 yards a game they have given up over that same span. And Jeremy Bates spoke to the media earlier this week. He talked about that the Jets game actually took a step backwards last week in the Windy City.
Every given Sunday, you got to bring your A game. You got to bring an attitude, and that's what our goal is this week. But I thought we kind of took a step back in the run game last Sunday, and our guys are professional. They take it serious, and look forward to coming back on Sunday.
Is that something that can be taught, Jeremy? The attitude.
I mean, I think you get to this league with an attitude. It's if you don't have an attitude, you don't stay very long. It's an aggressive game. It's a physical game, and you got to bring it 16 weeks during the regular season. So. To play this sport, you got to be tough. And Kevin Green, I like talking to Kevin Green a lot on Sunday mornings. He always talks about for 3 hours, you got to become a different human being, and it's three hours of being a warrior of intensity and being an NFL football player. And after that, you go do what you got to do. If you're a family man, if you're a dad, if you're going to go to Bible study, you go do that. But for those 3 hours, you got to, kind of be insane in a way. You're going there and playing contact sport, and you got to be an aggressive.
All right, if I were Jeremy Bates, I'd want to talk to Kevin Green before the games too. He, former wrestler, he's there. He's there. He said you got to be a little bit of an insano I agree.
He said maniac, I think the word was, and Kevin Green has more sacks in the National Football League in terms of being a linebacker than anybody in the history of the National Football League. That guy, he gets after it. And he gets after it coaching as well.
All right, let's get after in the game with EA. You ready?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, again, Sam Darnold.
I'm on a streak.
He's on a 1-week winning streak.
Okay.
Okay, Sam Darnold has 7 touchdown passes of at least 20 yards this season, tied for 3rd most in the NFL. Who is ahead of him?
You got to go to Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, right?
He is tied with Sam Darnold with 7.
Okay. So, Patty Mahomes, he's got such an explosive offense there with the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, so I'm thinking veteran quarterbacks. I'm going to go to Pittsburgh because Ben Roethlisberger puts it up all the time. I don't know his numbers this year, but if you think about Pittsburgh over the last couple of years, Big Ben is probably a good bet.
Big Ben is a good bet. He is 2nd with 8 touchdown passes. Who is number 1, EA?
I was going to say Mahomes, but I already talked about him.
Well, Mahomes is. I'll give you a clue.
No,
wait,
I don't want a clue.
Okay, no clues.
I was thinking about Drew Brees. Let's think about somebody who puts it up all the time. Let's go out to L.A. and take Phillip Rivers.
Phillip Rivers is correct. That is number 1 in the NFL with 9
Where is the belt?
touchdown passes.
Where is the belt?
Former
Bring
Jet
it out,
Ryan
Frank the
Fitzpatrick
Tank.
tied with Sam Darnold. Well,
Jack, get that belt out here.
Well, you were here on Wednesday with the Intercontinental Championship belt. I guess it is not a costume for EA.
I just need the regular heavyweight title.
What was it? Roddy Piper?
Yeah.
Roddy EA?
I don't need the Intercontinental belt. I just need the heavyweight title.
Okay, it's time.
Because right now, that's a 2-game winning streak. I am streaking.
All right, it's time for the 2-minute drill. Jets, Dolphins this Sunday in Miami.
Yep.
If the Jets want to win, the offensive line has to set a tone.
Yeah, interesting comments from Jeremy Bates that we just heard. He basically challenged the offensive line, saying, for 3 hours, you got to come up with that mentality and win those battles. The Dolphins have given up 200 yards a game on the ground over their last 3 games. The Jets rushed for just 42 yards in their loss to the Dolphins in Week 2. For the Jets to win, they have to run the football. It's all about attitude up front, and the Jets' offensive line has been challenged, Greens.
The Jets are 6th in the NFL with 15 takeaways, but struggling as of late, 0 takeaways in their last 2 games.
Both these teams, when you look at the Jets and the Dolphins, had thrived on takeaways early in the season. The Jets, in their 2-game losing streak, have not produced any of those game-changing plays, taking away the football, and that's going to help their offense as well. If they can contain the run game of Frank Gore and Drake, then they can get after Brock Osweiler. They will have some opportunities in the secondary to make some plays. The Jets need some takeaways. They got to get back to that.
The Jets last week struggled with penalties. If they want to win Sunday, you have to be composed in the heat.
Yeah, the Jets, going back to 2017, 2-10 on the road. Conversely, Miami this season, 3-1 at home. Last week against the Chicago Bears, the Jets had 7 pre-snap penalties. That's all about focus. The Jets, I'm sure, got after it in practice this week. They can't have any pre-snap penalties. You got to help out your young quarterback in Sam Darnold. You have to win on 1st and 2nd down. No more getting into those 1st and 15s or 2nd and 20s. Control the down and distance, and that means eliminate the laundry.
Jets-Dolphins Sunday, 1 p.m. in Miami for these teams' 2nd meeting of the 2018 season. But you got to watch EA and Olivia Landis on Pregame Central, presented by Pepsi, down at Hard Rock Stadium.
We have Armando Salguero on as well, Miami Herald columnist.
And there you go. So you don't want to miss that. That's 2 specials in 2 shows.
Yeah, well, that's what we try to do here.
That's all we have here for practice today, presented by SiriusXM. On Friday, again, head coach Todd Bowles will give the final injury report later on this afternoon. That's all we have here, and thanks for tuning in.